Hello and welcome to the MG EV podcast, streaming live on Monday the 20th of December 2021. We're here to talk about MG electric vehicles, hoping to inform and entertain you for about an hour or so. And as it's the last podcast of this year, we'll finish off in a bit of a reflective mode, hopefully. I'm Dave Stewart, username Dave S in the forum, and joining us this week in a slightly larger contingent from as far away as you can possibly get, well, certainly from us, but you, Jennifer, you're in Tasmania.
Yes, that's correct. Hi, everyone. Merry Christmas. Tassie Devil on the forum.
Great, welcome. And somebody new to the podcast, Jake Newis from West Yorkshire. Welcome, Jake.
Hey everybody, nice to meet you all.
Great, you're very welcome. And we'll maybe just get a wee bit of your background once we've introduced everybody else, if that's okay, Jake.
Yeah, that's fine, no problem.
And another regular from Wigan, Les Burrows.
Hi, I'm Les Burrows from Wigan. Les Burrows on the forum as well.
Good to see you again, Les. From South Wales, a good friend, Michael Fisher.
Evening all, from the lovely backdrop of the best Christmas movie of them all.
That's not Elf.
Oh, Die Hard.
Somebody once said that I looked like the guy in Elf, which I was delighted with. It was an office party. And from Crawley, Steve Green. Steve, it's good to see you again.
Evening all, Steve is Green on the forum.
Brilliant. And running a bit late, there must be something happening in Norway. Both of our Norway contingent. We're hoping John Griffiths will join us from Oslo. He's stuck in traffic at the moment, ironically. And Pat is hoping to join us at some stage as well from Tech and Wheels in Norway. And last but not least, from Chorley Group in Lancashire, our very good friend, Miles Roberts.
Hi everyone, Miles per kilowatt hour on the forum.
Great, welcome all. If you're watching live, thank you for joining us, and please click the like button and join in the discussion in the chat window. If you're watching later, thank you for choosing to watch the video, and please subscribe and get a notification when we go live next time, which will be early in 2022. We've got about 3 topics to run past everybody tonight. The first one, a bit of a boo, is the UK EV government grant scheme, and we'll be having a look and updating on what that's been like. Secondly, we're going to get Jennifer to give us a bit of an update on how her Tasmanian road trip in an EV went and how she got on with that. And then we'll finish off with our own thoughts, experiences, and reflections of driving an EV in 2021. So if everybody's okay with that, I shall make a start. So the first item, let's get it out of the way. It's the hardest to digest of the 3 items we're going to be looking at. And sorry for those out with the UK, but the UK government have taken some drastic action regarding the EV purchase grant scheme. So I'll just recap quickly on the key points as I understand them, and that invites Miles to correct me as I go along. So the UK government's plug-in grant has been cut from 2,500 to 1,500 and is now available for electric vehicles costing £32,000 or less. That represents a government plug-in grant cut of £1,500, which is quite a massive drop. Previously, it was available to cars under 35,000, so they've dropped the threshold for that. And the other threshold they've dropped is plug-in hybrid vehicles. And I think this caught quite a few folk out because the changes come in effectively immediately, into effect immediately. Miles, did I get most of that right?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. So the as you rightly said, nobody had any notice of this. None of the manufacturers or the dealers. So dealers were given some notification a few months ago that they thought that a grant cut was likely in the budget. So back in October, we were being quite fastidious about making sure that every time somebody placed an order with us, if they put a deposit on the card, that we made sure that we claimed the grant straight away. because historically what's happened when they've done this grant change is if you already had a grant in place and the order's already made, then you maintain the grant at the previous level. And that indeed is the case this time. Of course, after the last budget was at the end of October, we all sort of thought, well, they didn't announce anything, so maybe they're not going to bother until the spring. But as it happens, they just sneaks it out in a bad news week for the government. They decided that they're going to cut the grant from £2,500 to £1,500, and the cap has changed from £35,000 to £32,000. What that means in the UK is that the only of the new ZS EV, only the SE model actually qualifies for the grant. On the MG5, both the Excite and Exclusive trims both qualify for the grant. Some people have been confused because if you ordered a MG5 Exclusive in pearlescent paint, it took it just over £32,000 RRP, but you do still get the grant of £1,500 on the new scheme because the grant is the RRP on the road before you add any options such as paint. So the paint, the paint color and things like that, you know, if you're paying extra £700 for the paint or whatever for the tri-coat, that doesn't affect the ability to claim the grant. Having said that, the Trophy and the Trophy Connect are both over £32,000. What this now means, though, is that the price after the grant of the SE is £29,495. And the Trophy is now £33,995. So you've got an extra £4,500 to pay to go for the Trophy over the SE, which is a massive jump, obviously, because it's suddenly not only does it have the price differential in there, but obviously it's also not got the grant, so it's now an extra £1,500 out from where it was before. Some manufacturers have responded to this by cutting prices. Vauxhall announced today that the Corsa and the Mocha electric are both getting a £3,000 price cut, so that they sneak in under the new government grant level. MG hasn't done this yet. It stands to reason the fact that they only just launched the car and there's new pricing and everything, that they perhaps haven't actually, they might not actually have the margin in the car to offer to cut the price by so much. Plus, it becomes difficult as well because if, in order to qualify for the grant, they'd have to cut £2,000 off the Trophy, but they'd have to cut £2,500 off the Connect if they wanted the Trophy Connect to be under the grant level. And then it gets another £1,500 off. That brings it then down to only £500 off the SE price, which then means that you need to then cut the price of the SE as well to then keep the price differential as a walk-up. I just don't know what they've got. I think there's been an awful lot of calculator bashing at MG headquarters, and probably if they're going to announce any price change, it's likely to be in the new year when they do a reprice of the whole range. But whether they will actually make any price change to the ZSEV, or whether they'll just go, you know what, we've got pre-orders going through till March, April as it stands. Let's just, you know, bide our time. Let's just keep pricing where it is. Because there's also the risk that if they cut the price again to, you know, just sneak in on the new grant and then the government changes its tack again and cuts it again, it just leaves you with nowhere to go, no margin in the product. So the thing about plug-in hybrid vehicles is not strictly true. So for the last couple of years, there has been no plug-in car grant for plug-in hybrids at all. So since they changed it from £4,500 to £2,500, which I think was October 2018, there's not been a grant for plug-in hybrid vehicles, but there was a grant available for range extended electric vehicles like the BMW i3, where they had a decent electric range and then there was a small generator to keep it going as a backup. That's now been removed from the scheme, but the BMW i3 is no longer but range extender is no longer sold anyway in the UK, so that's probably just closing that loophole there for any future cars. But on the whole, no, it's not. I don't think it's good news that the government's cutting the grants at a time when you're supposed to be encouraging people to switch to electric. And I certainly think that, I mean, the £1,500 now, to be fair, it's almost to the point of saying, well, why do they bother at all? Because in terms of the administration and this artificial drop it gives up to £32,000 as a ceiling, means that you've got either a really cheap car, or then you've got quite a big increase to the next, to the next lot. I think it's a strange option to take. But we're with it at the moment. I say MG haven't announced any retaliation to this offer or any different pricing. What it does mean though is that the trophy, if you were going to get it on PCP, over 3 years, you're looking at £2,500 divided by 36 months is about £70 a month. So instantly, your monthly payments are looking at going up by £70 a month. That's even not taking into account any interest charges either. So it's a big jump in payments. It's a big ask for people, I think, really. So see what happens. I think that everyone's in the same boat at the moment. Obviously, a lot of manufacturers were in this case. Vauxhall we've got a Vauxhall franchise as well. One of their cars was the Vivaro electric 9-seat combi thing, and that was a retail price of 34,995, but it basically had no optional extras at all. Like it didn't have keyless entry or anything like that. You had to or parking sensors, anything like that you wanted to add on was an option, just so that they got the grant down to the point where it could be. And obviously now it's cut to £32,000. It's got no grant on it at all. So that car's now 35 grand. And the more expensive version, which is the one with all of the like leather interior and glass roof and everything's £42,000. So that's always been a big chunk, a lot more expensive anyway.
Miles, obviously, if somebody's got a car ordered now, the price is at the time of purchase, isn't it? It's not.
As long as the dealer did the right thing and actually claimed the grant when they placed the order. So I say what we were doing was, as soon as somebody placed a deposit on a car and we ordered a car, we put the grant on the system at the same time. And so maximum sort of 24 hours after the deposit being placed. Obviously it comes in on a weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Which means that all of our customer orders, so if you ordered with Chorley Group, I can say that all of the customer orders we have already taken stand by the £2,500 government grant because they were all placed with the correct grant level. One of the things that's changing now in the new rules is that previously lease hire companies, so places that offer these rates online, cheap contract hire, they're not actually dealers. What they would typically do is they would buy a batch of cars, say 20 or 30 at a time, and then they'd offer them out. They'd commit to that batch, and then they'd offer out cheap monthly payments to people online, and they've effectively got to sell those cars, be able to stuck with them. What they would previously do is they would claim the grant in their own name. So Miles Vehicle Leasing, whatever it was called, would claim 20 grants. And then they would effectively finance the cars, and then they'd lease them out to the end user, and then the end user would hand it back after 3 years. Well, the way that the grant works now is that any leasing companies need to actually register for the grant in the end user's name. So if Miles Vehicle Leasing had 20 cars on order, I'd have to have 20 different grants with 20 different names on them to be able to claim them, which potentially might cause some issues for how they've done things in the past, and that might cause that means that they're perhaps going to have to take a view on some of the offers they make might not be quite as juicy because they can't perhaps do the administration in the same way as they did before, because they need to commit to a name before they can actually get the grant claim started.
Is anybody affected? Has anybody got a car on order? Or looking around?
Not within our little group, I don't think. No.
No.
But I say it'd be interesting to see what happens with if you have a car on order. It would be a good idea to speak to your dealer and just make sure that they have confirmed that the grant is in place for you. There is they did give a week's grace, which will actually be running up on Wednesday. So if the dealer had placed an order for a customer, or a customer placed an order with a dealer in the week prior to the announcement being made, then they gave you a week's grace to be able to send through copies of order forms and things like that, and to prove that the order was taken at that time, that the deposit was taken, and then they can retrospectively claim the previous grant. If it was longer than a week since the order was placed, So if it was before the 8th of December, you were out of luck. They wouldn't actually let you retrospectively claim that grant, which is harsh because if it's the dealer that's made the mistake and it's potentially £2,500 difference, either the customer's got to suck it up £2,500, which wouldn't be my option, or the dealer's got to take a £2,500 cut, which would mean that they make a loss on the sale of the vehicle. So it's like a rock and a hard place, really, in that sense.
So, what are you seeing? The job facer or co-facer customers irate or questioning?
I mean,
the value in
customers
it?
are frustrated, certainly. I mean, we had some customers that we'd spoken to on, say, Tuesday last week and sent them a price quote, quoted them via email or whatever. And the customer had come back and, we'd sent them email at 6:30 at night. We close at 7. They'd got the email. And then at 7 o'clock the next morning, the grant's changed. We can't do anything about it. And, they've lost out. They've got a choice of, okay, well, we've got to re-quote you now because we can't get that grant.
Yeah.
So it's, there have been some customers that have been annoyed.
Yeah.
And rightly so, I think, because, but I say, unfortunately for the point of dealers and manufacturers, we didn't know. They just basically sent us all an email at 7 o'clock and said, the grant's changing. And by the way, the grant portal's been taken down for 4 hours to make sure you don't all go on, try and log on now and do it. So there's nothing we could do at all.
There's one or two folk just saying it raises the true purchase price up into a bracket where you're comparing the MG, particularly the trophy, etc., with other cars now. When it was priced competitively, it might make folks think, well, maybe there's other cars round about it. But
obviously, we work across several different franchises. I say, you've got cars that were priced the same before. So cars that were, say, well, I suppose if a car's going to be £34,500 now instead of 32 for the Trophy Connect, let's say, 34.5 is quite close to, say, 38,000 pounds for another, Skoda Enyaq or whatever, that sort of thing. But at the same time, when you actually compare the specification of the vehicles, when you compare what you get as standard on the ZS and what you do on other cars, I think that I think there is really, still a good reason for going to the MG. And as I say, even, it's okay to be blasé and say, oh, well, when you're at 34.5, you're quite close to 36, 38. But like I said, every, £2,500 an extra 70 quid a month. So, £2,000, an extra 50 quid a month. So if you're going to be, if you're looking at a car that's £4,000 more expensive, so, extra £100 a month, it's a big chunk on a PCP, is that? So I think that's, it is still an a competitively priced car. Whether MG will do anything in early 22 to adjust that, I don't know. I suspect with them wanting to launch the lower range car, it probably doesn't give them very far to go.
Well, quite offended that a picture of 10 Downing Street and wine being drunk is I can see both at the same time.
Well, I was told that with there being 7 or 8 of us on the call, that I had to have a glass of wine so it could constitute a business meeting. Otherwise, it would be COVID regulations would be a problem. So
anyway, I've dropped. On you go.
Can I just come in on that? What Margie just said. I've got a thing here that's on the forum actually, from Sam at Liscombe in Leeds.
Sam at Liscombe, yeah.
Yeah, and he's put a thing on here, a list of price increases by MG from the 1st of January.
Has he posted that on the forum now, has he?
It's on the forum, it's here, and he's got the MG ZSCV long range is going up by £50 on the 1st of January, but all the others are going up between £350 and £600. That's what he's listed here from the 1st of January, that MG are implementing price increases.
Yeah, and we knew that price increases were coming because, as I spoke to Guy Piganyakis on the interview I did on here a couple of months ago, their shipping costs from China have increased massively.
Yeah, you said this. Yeah, you did.
The shipping costs have gone up from nearly £1,000. So
yeah, well, that's like an extra £300 on top of the £1,500 drop, and it's getting up like an extra £2,000 near enough, give a second, depending on which model you're going to go for, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
We'll have to see whether they might come back with some sort of finance,
Yeah.
like they do
Yeah.
a deposit contribution type thing, or
Yeah.
that sort of thing might go forwards. But it's, for sure, added cost has got to be absorbed somewhere, and if it can't be absorbed, it's going to be passed on. So
It's got to be passed on. Of course it has. Of course, yeah. I mean, the one thing about this cut that they've made now is it applies to the likes of us who are buying a car for personal use. But from what I can see on the government's website, and I've read through this several times now, it's going to help a lot of companies, the likes of Amazon, DPD, delivery companies, because they're going to maintain that grant of £2,500 or £3,500, whichever it is. And they're going to order up to 1,000 vehicles each, vans, light vans and heavy vans. They can order as many as they want, up to 1,000 per customer per year. It's £2,500 for a small van, and it's £5,000 for a large van.
yeah, it was previously £6,000 for a small van and £6,000 for a big van. So the grants have also dropped quite considerably there, actually.
Anyway,
Yeah, they're trying to spread the money out wherever it's got to go, I suppose. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's us that's copping out for it. But that's the way it goes, isn't it? Nothing much you can do.
They've also touched the home charger grant as well. That's ending
That's
in
right.
March.
Yeah, took that out. Yeah. It's got installed by the 22nd of March. Actually installed and working by the 22nd of March. Not ordered. It's actually going to be installed and working.
They are moving it on to landlords and renters or something, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, on the home charger grant situation. So I know that certain manufacturers, for example, suppliers like Podpoint, for example, have said that they will only guarantee to install by the cutoff date if you've ordered one by the end of December, if it's going to be a non-standard install.
Yeah.
Or by the end of January, if it's going to be a standard install. So it's not giving people a lot of time, particularly what we're seeing as well, though. I mean, as well, looking at these price increases and so on here, as I say, we do have other franchises that we deal with. And we are seeing this across the board with all car manufacturers. So Nissan are doing price changes as well in the new year. Yep. And also, I mean, availability is, we've seen this on obviously the used cars. We've seen the used car prices going spiraling over the last few months. To the point where a car that I bought for my wife I got £3,000 more for it after 6 months and 6,000 miles, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And part of that pressure on demand, which is causing those price increase on used, is of course then causing manufacturers to say, well, we can't get new cars for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. We don't know what our inflation was going to be over that period of time. We've still got to commit to the price that if they sign today and we're supplying the car in July, we've got to commit to that price. There may be other price increase in the meantime. So they've got to effectively create a bit of fat in the car to cover them for that sort of.
I understand where you're coming from.
We've got. I think somebody said the other day, is it VW ID4 is like a 12-month waiting list now?
Yeah.
So there's there are long delays for a lot of cars, so that's why in some ways I think that even despite this maelstrom of increased prices and dropped grants and things like that for MG, they'll still continue to sell cars to the point where we can't get them for a few months because everybody else is in the same boat and everybody else's cars are also delayed and expensive and don't have as much kit on as the MG actually. So I think that that's my take on it anyway. It's not a great situation. We would prefer if they were increasing the grants rather than dropping them. I'm sure. Exactly.
It's not helping with the take up of.
But having said that, I mean, I did, and this will move on to Jenny later. But I did a road trip to Edinburgh this weekend and back, and the motorway rapid chargers, every single one I went to pretty much was full up with cars charging, all the chargers. So like Gretna Green, where you've got 4 Ionity. 5 Tesla and 2 GridServe, all full, and it's like
shows, doesn't it? Just shows the tech up and the infrastructure is not going up with it.
Yeah, I mean at the moment, I think as I said last week, I think at the moment for every one rapid charge that's installed in the UK, they're selling 55 EVs. Yeah, so it's not a helpful situation. The gap's getting bigger and bigger, and
getting a bit
as well, and I was fortunate this week, and I was doing the car at the range in I was doing the drive in a car which had 200 plus miles range. So going to Edinburgh and back, it's it's 200 miles roughly from my house to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So I only really needed a couple of little booster charges here and there to get me there, and then charge whilst I was there, and then come back. So it wasn't too bad. But I was at Annandale Water Services, which is like a joint. There's one service for both north and south together, and they've got one rapid charger. And when I got there was a Kia e-Niro at 40% charging and wanting to get a full charge.
Yeah.
I turned up, and then there was an MG ZS EV turned up as well whilst I was waiting. And I just thought, oh, sod it, I'll go find something else, because I still had 40
Yeah,
50
I've done
miles
that
left in my
myself.
car. One of the benefits, obviously, of having a bigger battery in your car is that you've got that flexibility to go, what, I'll push on to the next service as the next charger.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, now I've dropped a plate already, which is very unlike me, but Jake, my apologies. I was going to come to you as soon as we finish the introductions and get you to say a wee bit about yourself, what you drive and how long you've been driving an EV. So can I remedy that immediately? Jake, welcome. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Well, I'm an avid watcher of this podcast, so I do recognise everybody on the podcast. So it's nice to finally meet you all. And obviously, I try and help within the various forums as well where I can. I've owned my Team Black MG ZS EV Mark 1, as I call it, since March 20. Bought it on the 1st of March, just before the whole pandemic started. I've been working at home ever since, but I've still managed to clock up 16,000 miles. So I don't know how I've been able to do that, but I have. And I'm loving the car, to be honest. Prior to owning an EV, that was my first EV. I had a GTD Golf Mark 6, and then I had a Qashqai 15 plate. So good spec cars, but I still think the ZS is a much better drive than both of those. I have driven a test drive on the new Trophy. That was great. And obviously, with what Miles has been talking about recently and the government grants and what have you, it's giving me a better place to take a step back rather than jump in and buy something now, because I am wanting to upgrade. My wife's going to inherit the Mark 1. She's going to give me her Nissan petrol as a deposit payment down on the Trophy, hopefully. And I'll get a new car next year, but it all depends on when that might be, government grant permitting. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. I particularly like your Christmas bauble as well. That is... and I'm particularly impressed with Steve's the Christmas card on the background as well with the ZS. You're on mute, Steve.
Apologies. I stole it off of Facebook.
Oh, for goodness sake. Well, I'll have to up my game.
Do you like my tie, Dave?
I like your tie. Very nice. So, well, Jake, you're very welcome, and it's good. I'm glad you've enjoyed the podcast in the past as well. So,
yeah, very much so. Very much so.
As a member of the team, and we say this before and many times. Please, we want to get new blood on the podcast forum. If anybody's keen to participate, please do exactly as Jake did and join. Steve, you've been on a couple of times before as well. Yeah, so welcome everybody. So great. Well, let's see some folk going, oh my God, is there any good news? So let's ditch the UK and Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind just telling us how you got on with your Aussie road trip. And Jennifer's been already spoken to. There is no mention of cricket at any stage during any of the conversation.
I'll leave it till the end. Yes, we did a little road trip. It took a bit of convincing to get my partner to do this because of he's got terrible range anxiety. And I was just thinking what Miles was saying about the charges and how you're at the stage where there's too many cars for the charges. But at the moment we're at the stage, especially in Tasmania, where there's not that many cars, but there's also not that many charges. So I had to do a very detailed itinerary before we left with PlugShare about how far it was here to this one and how we could stop there. And so it took a bit of convincing, but we did it. So we had 3 days away, and I don't know whether you've got the map up, but we went sort of up the middle of Tasmania, up the main highway, and it was our first experience of actually high-speed motorway driving, because usually where we live, we don't travel much over 70 kilometres an hour just because of the terrain and the roads. So that was our first sort of high-speed experience, and it was interesting because I think Andrew got a bit carried away with the speed, and we were to get up to the middle of Tasmania. You have to it goes up. It's quite up. The elevation is quite steep. So we chewed up the kilowatt hours. Is that what, yeah, yeah. So we had to rethink some of our stops, and but then he started throttling back a bit and taking it easy, you know. So all the things that you guys have talked about on the podcast before about being, you know, not getting carried away with passing everyone, and you know, so that was it was interesting. The charging situation, we were lucky because we went midweek and holidays hadn't really started when we went. So when we got to the charges, they were always free. But that said, there are only 2. Everywhere we went, there was only 1 or 2 charging stations. So,
So of course, it's summer there just now. What kind of temperature were you driving in, Jennifer?
yeah, so we had perfect weather. So it was ranged between 15 and about 25, but dry. Yeah, it was lovely. It was perfect driving weather. So it was great. And we did a little bit of off-road onto gravel and dirt. So that was interesting. And the car handled perfectly. No problems, you know, even without the all-wheel drive, which we usually drive. So was very happy. The charging costs, I think we spent, what did I say, about $60. So that was to travel.
What would that have been in petrol, Jennifer, if you don't mind me asking? Same distance?
Yeah, same distance. It would have cost us about $110. So
Yeah, well, yeah, double, at least double, yeah.
Yeah, at the moment. So we had a great time, and we've got, apparently the new government grant list came out, and we've got, I think in Tasmania, we've got 20 new fast chargers coming on next year, particularly up the east coast of Tasmania, which is becoming quite a popular tourist drive, because it's a lot warmer and nice beaches and quite famous tourist sites. So that's interesting. And then they've also chipped in for 25 what they call destination charges, which I think they have at sort of accommodation places and public parks and things like that. There's slow charges from what I gather, but it's better than nothing. So yeah, things are starting to ramp up. It sounds like we must be at the stage that you were probably at about 5 years ago.
Yeah, probably in terms of sales as well, you know, in terms of the volume of sales. So
yeah,
I think so.
In 2018, we were selling 1 in 20 cars were electric in Chorley Group, and this year we're up to about 1 in 4. So
Wow.
a massive increase, you know, and that's been certainly when you go on the journey, like I said, driving up the motorway this weekend, we saw that the sheer number, the volume of electric cars on the roads now is, you know, complete compared to a few years ago when I used to do journeys all around the UK and be fairly confident that at most of the chargers, I would be the only person wanting to charge. Maybe I'd have to wait, you know, if there was only one charger, maybe I'd have to wait a couple of minutes for somebody to finish before I went on. It's now to the stage where it's just getting a bit of a pain, really, in some respects. They're just not, you know, you can't, the chargers are there and, you know, they might be working, but I think that the issue is more that you're probably more likely to have to queue, which if you're talking about a, you know, 30 to 40 minute charge time, but you've got to wait an hour to get on the charger because there's 2 people waiting, you know, it makes it problematic. So In fact, Jake, we had this problem a couple of weeks ago. We went to test
Yeah, we
the
did.
rapid charge capability of the new ZS, and we drove to the Ionity chargers at Leeds, and thought we'd planned it quite well with 13% battery remaining to get there. And we got there, and there was 6 chargers, 2 of which were out of service, 4 cars charging on the other 4, and 2 vans were waiting. So we had realistically a wait of probably up to an hour if we wanted to get on and use those chargers. So we ended up driving 25 miles to get to the next nearest rapid chargers. Well, ultra rapid chargers, because we were looking for over 100 kilowatt chargers for us to then do the range test. But it was that was a bit of an eye opener for us in terms of a couple of years ago. I mean, I did a range test on the first ZS EV, and I went to an Ionity charger. I was the only person there, and then somebody arrived as I was about to leave on those same chargers at Leeds. And now I say, they're queuing. So there's definitely been an uptick in demand, and I think that it's they've got to get some more chargers out there. Basically, I'd say it's almost to the point in the UK now, Jen. I don't know if this is the same for you. You've got range anxiety because they're quite sparsely around. We've got charger anxiety because it's not the car that's going to let you down. You know where you can get to a charger. It's just the charger may well either be not working, or it may be queued up if it is working. So I think that's the problem for us now. It's the the lack of enough chargers. Where they've currently got 1, they need 12.
Yeah.
And where they've got 12, where they've got 12, all a bit like in rugby, all of them are full. So
what I've tended to do on 2 recent trips, I went to Watford from West Yorkshire. That was 250 miles each way. Went to in August. That was 163 each way. I tend to try and charge away from the motorway services. So I'm happy to drive off the motorway and go to a McDonald's Instavolt, for example. And I find that more convenient because you can have a drink, you can have some food, and half an hour later you're full and off you go. That's what my preference is at the moment.
That's kind of what I did on the way up to Edinburgh. The hotel I had planned was at I had overnight on Friday night was at Livingston, at a pub which had a rapid charger, Osprey charger, a rapid charger on site. So there's only one charger, but it's a pub and it's not that close to the motorway. So I was thinking, well, at some point over that night when I'm there, I'll be able to plug in and charge. And sure enough, I charged the evening and I moved the car as soon as it got fairly well up. And then, but the next morning there was a leaf on it charging that hadn't been staying at the hotel. It's just somebody who must have dropped in. But no, when you go to motorway services, it can be quite tricky now, I think.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of weird experiences recently. I've done the rugby grid serve bank several times now. I've done that quite a few times now. But in the last couple of weeks, I've done London a couple of times, and I've done Devon, and I've done the Lake District, and I've been Yorkshire, I've been all over the place. But the one at rugby last week, I think it was, there was 3 out of commission. 3 wasn't working at all. And the others was all being used. Every one of them was being used. I luckily didn't have to queue up. Just as I pulled in, there was somebody pulling up on, so I was lucky. But it was full. And yet when it first opened, I went there the first week it was open, there was me and another guy there, and that was it, wasn't it, 2 of us? And it's full, the words got round. When I went
thing as well, when there's, I think as well, a lot of people are heading for charging hubs because they think, well, if there's only one charger, I'm running the risk that there's going to be other cars queuing. So if I go to one where there's 12 chargers, I've got more chance of being a free bay. But if everybody has the same thought, then it ends up being often the opposite. Like say, Jake, if you go to that Instavolt we went to at McDonald's, we didn't see another car all night, did we? But if we, so that was,
they need centre head for the hubs now because there's quite a few of them about now. There's one just opened actually, just outside of Bristol. I think it's called Cribbs Causeway.
Yes.
The area. And the funny thing about that was, if I can just mention it, I go down that road 2 or 3 times a year, down the M5, and as you're going over the top at Bristol there, you always see the cars that's come off the ships all piled up there in the holding bays waiting to be distributed.
Yeah.
And this time when I went down, believe it or not, I didn't see a car.
Yeah.
I seen several vans. There were several vans there, large and small, but there was no vehicle, no cars there at all. and that's the first time I've ever seen that. Because that's,
normally-
I think, is it Poltershead? That is
Yes.
the first time I've ever seen that empty like that. I've never seen that before. In all the years I've been going down there, I've never seen that before.
Or Avonmouth, depending on which side of the river.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Mike. But it was completely empty, which is unusual. It's very unusual. That is very unusual.
Can I just make an observation about the charges, which I hadn't come across before because we don't hardly ever use them. We've got a home Zappy, and just when we went to the public charges, you know, getting old lady hands, I had a lot of trouble with the weight of the actual.
Well, the thick
It's
cables
quite
quite
heavy.
heavy.
Them
Yeah.
cables are heavy. They're heavy. Yeah, they are.
I don't know how much heavy they're going to get if they. I don't know anything about electrics and stuff, but if they try to up the speed of the charge, does
Yeah,
that
the
mean the
wattage.
cables are going to get heavy and
Well, that's
heavier
one thing.
That's
Actually,
exactly what's
Jenny, yeah,
happening.
you're right. So obviously to do like 350 kilowatt chargers, they need to have thicker cables and often liquid cooled. So they have a liquid
Yeah.
running inside the cable also to cool it down.
So that's what we were using. That's what they had, 350 kilowatt charger.
Yeah, so
heavy.
the Ionity chargers that we have in the UK that are that rating have got sort of like what do you call it, Jay? Like a sort of spring-loaded sort of suspension, don't they? Over part of the
Yeah.
cables. They have like a
Yeah,
wire
yeah,
holding
the
it
cable
down,
takes
which
the weight. It's
it
supposed to
takes
take
some of
the
the weight.
weight.
And it's
Counterbalance.
almost a bit like having a petrol pump, you know, sort of spring-loaded at the top. But it takes some of the weight off the cable because otherwise they're quite.
Oh,
There's
are
quite
quite
a bit of
heavy.
weight to them. You know, they're
Yeah,
not the
they are.
most ergonomic thing.
no,
Mm.
and I was thinking, like, you know, like luckily there was two of us because I was going, oh, you know, you've got to bend down, and I was just having trouble. And
Yeah, and that's all. Again, that's one of the things they fixed in the ZSEV now. The new charging flap, which opens sideways rather than up, means that you don't need to bend, which again helps more with the ergonomics of actually seeing what
Yeah.
you're doing and plugging it in. So
I've got a query, and it relates to my bugbear of rapid chargers over 80%. Twice recently, once VW ID3, the sort of golf size one,
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be three.
three.
on a rapid charger, fully charged, but the nozzle came out. When I went, just pulled out the nozzle, and I could then recharge.
Yeah,
But then another time, Tesla, exactly the same, rapid charge, fully charged, nobody there, couldn't get it. Phoned Charge Place Scotland to say, can you kill the supply to the guy? No, we can't do that.
yeah. So it depends on the car. So some of them release when the car's full, and some of them don't. So basically, you know, when you on your Type 2 charger, you've got a little pin that drops in to hold the cable in place. That same pin can hold a CCS lead in place, and normally that connection on most cars, that locking unlocking is controlled by the charger. So if a rapid charger plugs in, it locks the cable when it starts communication, and then when it finishes charging, it unlocks it automatically. But on some cars, the unlocking only happens when you unlock the vehicle, which then means that you've got a cable attached to a car, and it's not going very, very far. And that's one thing. One thing as well with different cars, so the 80% rule is all well and good, apart from the fact if you need 85% to get to your destination, or you need 90% or whatever. And also, for example, an MG ZS EV long range, we had what, 76 kilowatts, was it, Jake? Because the top
Yeah, we
charging
did, yeah.
state? Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas a Ioniq 5 can charge at 115 kilowatts, 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So who's got more right to use the charger? Is it the car that's pulling a faster rate at 80% than what we ever do anyway? Or whether it, but you know, I can appreciate if it was a car that was at 99% and it's trying to balance charge on a rapid, and it's, you know, drawing in, you know, 3 kilowatts or whatever the charge rate, I can totally understand getting narked. But I think that the part of the benefit, well, the frustration about the 80% thing, I think, comes from the fact there's not enough infrastructure, there's not enough chargers. If there was, if there was 25 chargers or 35 chargers, and theoretically at the moment we might just get away without, you know, them all being full at once, then you'd probably be less upset if one of the cars was charging for 100%. One thing I did actually notice was which one of the services I stopped at, North Lakes, Carlisle-ish sort of way. They have 2 GridServe rapid chargers, and then they've got 2 22 kilowatt AC chargers. But previously there was just 2 50 kilowatt DC rapid chargers, but now they've basically got 2 triple head rapids, and you've also got 2 Type 2s. I thought those Type 2s are probably quite useful for people who are either in Zoe's, which, you know, the old Zoe's which only did AC charging, or if you're in a more modern electric car, let's say a Tesla or a EV6, whatever, that's got 22 kilowatt onboard AC charging. You can get sort of like 50 to 75 miles in an hour in that. So that might be enough to just get you to the next service if there was a fault with the DC rapid, or if the DC rapid's got a queue. So I'm all for, you know, having destination style chargers as a backup for a DC, because they don't cost that much to install, and actually they can be really, really useful if you're in a pinch.
Well, I'm going to see 6 aghast faces any minute now. You think you know somebody, you think Dave S in the forums, a mild-mannered, gentle Scotsman, but I left that Tesla driver a pretty shitty note. So I was not impressed.
Do you not? Excuse me.
Did you get a reply, Dave?
I might do after listening to who I am now. You say if you're a Tesla driver in the Inverness area, I've got your card marked.
Yeah.
Do you not think there's an argument for you saying that sometimes you have to get to that 95% to get you home? But surely waiting around that long, surely you're better just charge it to X and then going and then have a charge.
Definitely. I totally agree with that.
Can I come in here? Just when I was at GridServe, Les, you mentioned you were at GridServe, and I
Ruby
serve on my way home, and just like you, it was full. I ended up pulling into a charger that was empty, but it was broken, and I didn't realise.
Yeah, you don't know.
And then luckily, the chap next to me, who was in an MG, funnily enough, he moved away and he let me. But next to me was an Audi e-tron, and this is, I think, Steve, where people have the issue, because Audi e-tron, he was at 95% pulling 125 kilowatts. Mm-hmm. So is there any need for him to, I mean, the etiquette is to move away at 80%, but I don't think if he's still pulling 125 kilowatts to get that few extra percentage.
That's fair enough. But if you are drawing down, what's the point in waiting?
No, I absolutely agree. But I think a lot of these more modern cars now, they can pull a lot more kilowatts.
They can pull almost a full.
Yeah, almost
a full.
And what I also say as well is, in some ways, it's like it comes down to the lack of infrastructure as to why we get annoyed with it. Because if you're there charging to, let's say, 80%, you go, okay, well, like for example, me in Scotland, I charged to 94% on this rapid charger in a pub, because I could see out the window there was nobody going to the car to, going to the charger to use it.
Fair enough.
But 94% from Edinburgh was almost enough to get me home with just a very, very short top up. If I charged to 80%, then on my way down, I'd probably been panicking quite a bit more as I got down to the charge. And I went to Annandale Water, full, Gretna, full. So as I'm going down the services, I'm stopping each service and they're all full of people charging. As I'm getting down, I'm thinking, my wife's going, have we got enough charge to get? I said, yeah, we're going past loads of chargers. The issue is that they're all in use. It just means we might have to wait a little bit, but there's no point in me waiting an hour here. I might as well drive to see if the next one's free. But again, with more range comes more flexibility.
I'm hearing your shim sham. I'm not having it. I'm not buying it. Jennifer, back to your road trip. Can I ask? And it's about the 80%. Were you topping up at rapid chargers?
Yes. Generally, we tried to. As I said, there was no one else charging really. I think maybe one station we came out, there was another MG EV there, ZS. So that was interesting. But generally, we went to about 80, 85. I think once we went to 100 just because we had time and we had to do a big trip the next day when we were a bit worried about that. So I don't think the etiquette thing has kicked in here because it hasn't been necessary yet. But
well, you'll lead my campaign in Tasmania, I'm sure. But I did a road trip similar to yours, and I'm looking at your backdrop there. We went down the west coast of Scotland to the Kintyre Peninsula, which some of the scenery is very like that. And I, of course, forgot that I was only going to be filling up to 80%. So I was really only filling up to 128 miles range, whereas in my little spreadsheet, I was expecting to get about 160. And I thought, oh my God. So yeah.
You have to build that into the itinerary, I think. Which I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I always do.
Yeah.
Like a good spreadsheet for a long journey. Always good, always good.
I think that's the thing as well, Dave, you're saying with the long journeys is that if you, and particularly in the ZS as well, where it doesn't give you a battery percentage readout. So if you're charging to 80% and then you're driving until the warning comes on your dash, you've got 20% left. You're realistically only using 60% of the range of the vehicle.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you got, so whereas if I was, so 60% of the range of your vehicle might just be 100 miles or slightly less maybe in winter. So I think that in the car that we took up this weekend, which I haven't mentioned, it's my wife's new Volvo. In her car, 100% is 200 miles roughly in this weather, and it's so if I was to charge to 80%, that's already 40 miles I'm down on, but fortunately I've got a battery percentage readout, and so I actually got it down to, it was 8% left when I got home, because I was fairly confident in the range by that point that I could manage to get 2 miles per percent, and so I could I was confident that when I charged up, so I just topped up for about 12 minutes, something like that, I think it was, at the services on the grid serve, because I thought, and Dave, you'll appreciate this as a Scotsman, I thought I'm not going to pay 30 pence per kilowatt hour for excess range that I don't need when I get home, when I can charge about 5.5 pence per kilowatt hour on my Octopus at home. So I was like, so that's why I came back with 8%. I thought, it gives me enough leeway, but not, not silly. But again, that car,
I'm the same, and I live down south.
yes, but it's
I mean, it doesn't flag you guys off. It's always just me.
One of the charges, Annandale Water was on free vend when I went on the way northbound, so we only stopped because my wife needed a comfort break, and but the charge was on free vend and it was empty, so I was like, well, we'll plug in whilst we pop inside and get a McDonald's or whatever. So we popped in for like 10-15 minutes and got an extra 30% battery, which, and then when as I walked out the door to go to my car, there was a Leaf just pulling into the charge bay, so he was very pleased. I'd only charged from I think I charged from 40% to 35% to 65%, something like that, I think it was, or 75%. So I disconnected straight away, and I said, they said, oh, that's a good bit of news. He says, you're ready to go as soon as I come. I said, well, even better news, said it's on free vend. He goes, oh, happy holidays. So, but yeah, so I mean, he only had 8% left in his Leaf 40 kilowatts hour. And again, if he wouldn't be able to make it to any other rapid charger from where he was. So if I'd have been on there and stuck to 100%, he'd have been stuck all the time until I came out of the services.
Yeah.
So I can sort of see it both ways there. I can see the frustration of someone with a smaller battery vehicle and why they would get narked.
If your drawdown speed beyond 80% has reduced and almost reduces to the same speed as AC, you'd be as well just politely coming off, going on to the AC and letting somebody else go onto the rapid charger.
Yeah, I mean, at what was it, 85, 90% when I looked at my car, it was still charging at 45 kilowatts, I think, on the rapid charger. So it was still going strong at that point, which is why, again, I didn't feel too guilty about charging to 95% at the.
Can I ask a question? What's everybody's opinion of, grid serve? Take that as an example. They might have 20 charging bays. If they're all full and you've got 4 waiting, and somebody loses track of which order they're in, there are no waiting areas, are there, for these places? So
no, there's not. You're right.
That is a big issue for me as well. That's going to get.
I've seen arguments. I have seen arguments with that. I have seen it happen. I've seen people. I was here before you. No, you wouldn't. I've seen that a couple of times, and I don't know how they're going to get around that one. Quite honestly.
I think the forecourt plan, like the grid server at Braintree, I think that overcomes the issue of queuing a bit more, because you're naturally in a queue to the charger, and as one moves out, you move in, and you're not. The problem at motorway services is that the parking is often haphazard at the best of times. And so if you've got a few charges, you might have to charge like this MG's EV at Annandale had to go park sort of 3 rows round because it was nearest space, and then just come and stand near one of them came and stood near the charger to have a look and see what the thing was. And then I think they just sort of sat there and went, well, we haven't got enough to get up BTOC to get up to the next services. So we're just stuck here until the car moves, They're quite relieved when I drove away.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
Thank
we-
you.
Yeah.
Oh, Stu, everyone on the podcast is on YouTube saying they can't hear us now. Can't hear any of us.
Lost audio.
Hang on.
Lost audio. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Nope, no sound. We can
Yeah,
hear
I
each
can
other.
hear. I can hear.
Oh, Stuart.
They've lost audio.
How's it?
Oh, just
Oh,
Stu.
just Stu.
Just me. How is it now?
Only Stu. Yeah.
It should
Can you
be.
hear all of us? Oh, Miles is back. Okay.
Apologies. How is it now?
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Can you hear
Is
the
everyone audible?
Give us a
Yeah,
thumb.
can-
Looks like-
in.
okay.
Give us a thumbs. Can you hear me now? Or am I? Okay,
Yeah,
you can hear
Dave
me now.
Bell says come back okay.
Okay,
So
many apologies. All right, I'll start again. Sorry, folks. Okay, so Monday, a week ago today, I had to go to Leeds, went to Leeds and back, and I've done some podcasts about charging etiquette, and it was getting dark, and there are 2 posts. It's at Trowell, southbound, and they're both the grid serve, and there's one which is Chadamo and CCS, and the other one is double CCS. There was a DPD van on the Chadamo. It was charging with Chadamo, and somebody else had mentioned that there were vans. I think there's quite a few more vans going to be using these chargers now. So we're going to be competing with them. And then on the other one was a Jag I-Pace, and he'd already been on for an hour, and he was at something like 60%, and I had to charge there, and I plugged into the same post as him, and it said that he was drawing 120 kilowatts, and I plugged in, and the grid serve thing took £1, and then it said waiting for enough current or something like that, or enough power, and then it cut off and said not enough, or failed, communication error, and I did that 3 times. It took £3. And eventually I thought, well, okay, I'm not going to be able to get charged. Maybe it's because it'll only serve 1 car at a time. So I phoned up GridServe and I said, am I going to be able to get a charge? What's the problem? Am I going to get my £3 back? The principal.
Good man. That's
And-
the question.
Yeah, and she said, oh yeah, don't worry about the money. It'll just get refunded when you do your charge. And I said, but am I going to get a charge? She said, no, it's only doing 1 car at a time. So there are 3 bays, and it only does 1 car at a time. So I was basically waiting for this guy to finish, and I said to her on the phone, well, I think these guys now been here for over an hour and 10 minutes. And he's up to like 70 something percent. I said, when it gets to 80, I'm going to unplug it. And she said, oh no, you can't do that. I said, well, I need a charge. I can't wait forever. You're only supposed to charge up until you're 80% anyway. There's no sign of him. And when it gets up to 80%, I'm going to unplug it. And I started having not an argument, but a discussion about the etiquette and whether. She said, no, it's not your place to unplug it. I said, I'm stood right here in exactly the right place to unplug it. I'm next to it. And Yeah, so charging etiquette and queuing as well to plug in. So this is a real big deal actually, because when someone comes up and I'm charging, I always say to them they'll look at me and I'll be there waiting and I'll say, 10 minutes. And they know then, and it's the right thing to do.
That is the right thing, Stuart.
And I've just
Well,
said,
not everybody does it. Not everybody. Last week when I was in a hotel in Taunton last week, and I put a notice on my window because there was a pod point charger, a 7 kilowatt one, and I plugged in, and I estimated it was going to take about 3.5, 4 hours to get to where I wanted it to be, about 83%, which should have been enough for me to get to my next place. And I put a note on the windscreen saying that I was going to be about 3 hours, put the time on when I'd done it, put the time on, 3 hours, and I put my phone number in case anybody was desperate. Nobody phoned me. I mean, I got my 3 hours on it. There's no problem at all. I got it where I wanted it to be. But that's why I think there should be something somewhere along the line. This has been on the forum numerous times about people and this etiquette of charging. It doesn't seem to exist. Some people adhere to it, like Dave and myself and you adhere to this 80% sort of ruling. But nobody has laid any laws down that you can only have 80%.
No, it's
what it needs really. It needs these charges to be set so that they cut off at a certain level.
Well, they
after
do.
A certain time.
I mean, normally my car, if I just leave it plugged in and nobody comes along, and I've got plenty of time and I need it, I'll let it charge all the way up to 94%, and then it'll automatically stop. It slows the charging curve. It slows down at the end anyway. So it becomes very slow charging. In the end, by the way, the very nice couple who owned the Jag, they came along when it was charged at 84%. And, I had a sort of a quick chat and I said, they were paying attention. I mean, and I was thinking, well, what do you do? Do you walk into the open foyer, the large open area of the motorway services? Yeah, and you say, could the arseholes who own the Jagger that's already charged up come and unplug it? It's so, but I think the bigger deal actually is queuing, because, what I always do if the charging posts are full, I always walk up and have a conversation with the people charging there, if they're there, and say, okay, how long are you going to be? Oh yeah, I can see that you're not going to be this long. Can I have this after you? Yeah, no problem. So that they know that I'm next. And obviously it's not always possible to park close to the charger, like you were saying. You have to be around the corner, and then this is where arguments come from. But at least if you've established with the person who's currently charging that you were there first, then maybe you can communicate with them, and then they sort of move out the way, and then you sort of get in quickly. But this is just going to get worse as more people get electric cars. And that's
there's some chargers in West Yorkshire by NG, and they have 75 minutes overstay fees of £10.
Yeah, Tesla do this. Tesla charge. They make a charge if you do it over a period of time. You get so long on a Tesla charger, and after that they start charging you.
I made a video about
Tesla.
Charge. Go on, Mike.
Tesla kicks in what is called idle fees from 5 minutes when it gets 100%.
Yep.
And it racks up. It can go into it's like £3 or £4 per minute.
Yeah,
my son's got a Tesla Model. Every time charging, he's always panicking just in case it goes off. Just in case he's got to charge, he gets charged for it.
That's what you need.
Always panicking.
That's what you need. Once you've got to 100%, you need the person charging needs to be in a state of panic. That's what they need is to make sure that they get back to the car to unplug it for other people. I mean, I stayed at a Holiday Inn way up north, Washington, and I wanted to charge first thing in the morning to come home. Yeah, all right, then it's way up from north as far as I'm concerned, Dave. And there was a guy with an iPace there, and he'd plugged it in sometime in the sort of dinner time in the evening, and left it plugged into the rapid charger overnight, and it still wasn't completely charged, and it had been plugged in for 10 hours with something like a £10 per hour overstay fee after the first hour, something like that. So I hope he got charged £100. But some people just don't know the etiquette yet. So I think it's incumbent upon us to educate them, right? And I'm done. I'm going to exit now. Thank you for letting me rant, everybody.
That's just because there's been one or two nasty comments about you starting to fight with other folks' cars. That's sure. I'm a member of EVA Scotland, and we actually get a wee time logo card and you say how long you're going to be there, and they've got a mutual
That's good.
contact number.
Bit like a disabled badge.
Yeah, similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah, good,
And
that's good.
you just
Good
say
idea.
to them, I'm going to be there for 45 minutes, and if
Yep.
somebody comes up and says I need it, there's a mutual phone number they can phone, and I get a message saying get back to your car. So good idea. Good
It's a
idea.
good idea.
There's an
That's a
app
good
out
idea.
there that does that as well, isn't it? You log on to an app. I can't remember what it's called now, but then
Need to charge
can.
it?
No, something else.
Charge bump.
You've got a sticker in your car or something. They can go and see where you are or something. I can't remember what it was called now.
There's charge bump, isn't there, which lets you speak
Might
to
be
other
that.
EV drivers. But
Yeah.
I think the overriding fact is basically they need a lot more chargers. Ultimately, because Dave, if you get a call from an EVA member and they say, "I really need a charge," and you're on 65%, but you know you need 90%, let's say, because you know that the next charger up the road has been reported as faulty on ZapMap, you're going to say to them, I need 90%. That's not going to, the fact that they've called you and said, I've only got 8% left in my car and I need to charge. If you're at 65% and you need 95%, you are going to need to charge. And it makes no sense for them to charge for you to wait around for them to charge.
No.
You think you're going to continue, aren't you? So I think that the issue needs to be, we need a lot more chargers. I do think that it is a really good idea if they're installing rapid chargers to have AC chargers near them as a backup, because particularly the 22 kilowatts AC. I know that our cars can only charge on 7 kilowatts AC, but even 7 kilowatts in an hour is going to give you 25 miles. Well, it might be that you've already got, because you're not running it down completely, you might already have 20 miles, let's say, on your car, but you wouldn't trust it to drive 25 miles to the nearest services.
No.
So it might well be that having that AC, or again, the AC charger could give you an extra 3 or 4 kilowatt hours in the time whilst you're queuing to wait for the rapid charger to come through.
Yeah, come on, yeah.
So you're not completely wasting your time by sitting there for half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is, I think that's what's needed. We need an awful lot more chargers. We need an awful lot faster chargers, and we need cars to be capable of charging as well. It's like our dealerships now. So when our Nissan dealerships came online, they were all given one rapid charger. I say given, we paid for them, but we were told we had to have them. And the problem with one rapid charger on site, when you've got 6 customer handovers that day, you've got 2 demonstrators, you've got 3 courtesy cars, and you've got customers turning up for services who also want to charge, is that you've basically got to play hopscotch with the cars, constantly swapping them in between the charging bays to get them onto rapid chargers. They all get the bit so they can carry on. So what we've done is we've still got the one rapid charger because it's a useful get out of jail. But on the other dealerships now, what we're doing is we're putting, for example, a new MG dealer in Chorley. We've got 6 chargers in the workshop. We've got 2 in the prep bay. So that takes care of the service and the sort of handover side of things. And then we're putting 12 chargers, AC chargers, in the car park. So all of the demonstrators and everything like that will be taken care of. And so the rapid charger, stupid though it sounds, this £30,000 rapid charger hopefully won't need to get used, because everyone will just charge on the AC chargers. And they're all load managed. So they all, if we plug all 20 chargers in at once and they're all empty, then it'll drop down the charge rate a little bit until they're all charged. But I think that, it'll then, as one car gets fully charged, then it'll, up the rate on the rest of the chargers. But I think that's the sort of solution we need going forward, particularly for hotels. I think that hotels and pubs, it's almost stupid having a rapid charger.
Yeah.
You're okay, I suppose you need one rapid charger for the guy that turns up on a lunch break and just wants to, on a journey, they say, okay, we'll plug it into charge, we'll go inside for a bite to eat, and we'll come out and the car will be full. That worked quite well, I suppose. But for a hotel where it's got an overnight accommodation, you don't want just one rapid charger, because who, after they've had a drink with their evening meal, is going to go move the car? You're not, are you? So what you need is you want to be able to plug it in at 7 o'clock when you get to the hotel, and you're probably not going to move it until 8 o'clock the next day. But again, Les, you need to have more than just that one charger. You need to make sure that you've got 10 or 15 of them, and you've got to have the capability to load manage them so you don't blow the electrics. But you need to make sure that you've got enough for the current demand and enough for future, so that when
Totally agree with
2030 everyone's got electric cars.
My local Tesco's actually took one of their pod points away, and now we're screaming for them. They're always full in my local Tesco's.
Hey guys,
Yeah, mine's always full.
poor Jennifer sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, what's ahead of me in 5 years' time?" It's like civil war in England. It's incredible. You can take my freedom, but you won't take my charger.
The thing is, Jenny, that hopefully by the time, if you are a few years behind us, what will happen is that we'll do all this sort of arguing between ourselves, and then your government will go, well, we've seen what works, we've seen what doesn't, so we'll just do that one. And it won't go through, hopefully you won't go through the growing pains that we've had.
Yeah, you have our learning process to go back on.
Thank you.
Anyway, guys, I'm looking at the time. We're really gulping into our time. So the last item was, what's our highlight of 2021 as it disappears, it evaporates from under us? I will start off, if you don't mind, and Les is smiling away there. My highlight, I think, being a little facetious, was when the MG5 guys got their roof rails doing something. That was just, to hear them stop whining on about their blinking roof rails was bliss for me. But in all honesty, probably similar to Jennifer, I've had a couple of really good road trips, but that one down to the Mulligan-Tyre, the temperature was about 20, 25-ish. Going down Loch Ness and all that way, you're pretty much on the flat. You're not going uphill, down dale a lot. And I reckon I would have got in excess of 200 miles if I hadn't stopped to charge up. So that was mine. I thought the car was just wonderful. And I've had one or two negative points, as some folk know, running out on the A9 on a cold, horrible, sleety night. But there we go. Who wants to go next? What's your highlight of 2021?
Oh, very quickly, mine's got to be every time that Dave's on. It's and you saying Dave, Dave's. Oh, sorry, John. When John's on, and you say that John's somewhere near Oslo.
Somewhere near. Yeah, it sounds spooky. Where does he come from? He's a spy. That's where
makes me chuckle every time you say that.
Somewhere near Oslo. Miles, have you had any highlights?
There's been loads. To be
or are you agreeing?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I mean, we've had a big year. You know, the launch of the MG5 long range with 75 kilos on the roof. We've had the launch of the ZS EV, which I lucky enough to get on the press release for. That was good. I think that 2021, for many reasons, has been as difficult as 2020 in terms of the wider COVID picture, but also in terms of the semiconductor issues, the short supply of vehicles. It's been taxing from our point of view in the business, in the trade. But I think there's a lot of reasons to be positive. And I say, the increase in demand for electric cars, it's gone from 1 in 20 to 1 in 4 in our dealership group, really shows that I haven't just been hitting my head against a brick wall for years, that actually, some of this mud's sticking and people are listening to what we say. And it does sometimes feel like, we still have people coming into our dealerships now and they want to buy a diesel car. Or they want to buy a petrol because, and we're talking about people who they've only done 5,000 miles in a year, and there's no reason why they couldn't go electric, realistically, So I think that there are still a number of people that still need to be changed. There's still an awful lot needs doing on infrastructure to improve things because of people that don't have driveways and that would be reliant on this public infrastructure, which is now full. And there are I think a lot of these people, like the van drivers we saw at Leeds, Jake, they were charging there because they didn't have an alternative charger. They didn't have anywhere to charge at home, and the depot didn't have any chargers. So I think that in terms of infrastructure, we have a massive demand for people who can't charge at home. Otherwise, all of these people are getting them for company car reasons. That's going to be the problem. I think overall my highlight for my 2021 highlight is probably going to end up being my 2022 highlight, which is our brand new dealership, which it looks like is finally going to be opened by the end of this week, just in time for Christmas and potentially another lockdown. Which is the Chorley Group. We've got a brand new £2 million dealership we're just opening. So I'll put photos of that on the forum.
Where's that at, Miles?
At Chorley, at Tackhurst Road. So it's across the road.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, across the road from where the Chorley Nissan MG site was.
Yeah, I've seen a building.
So we've got a new prep centre there and a massive 9-car showroom that we're just opening. So
Brilliant.
That, due to many reasons, lack of supplies and that sort of thing, has meant that it's taken a lot longer than it was planned. It was planned to open in September. It will now be open for January, unless Boris says otherwise. But it's I just put it in today and had a look around. It looks really, really good. And once we get the new chargers installed as well, I think that'll be a real. Hopefully, we can do maybe a bit of an MG EVs meet. Be good to have a bit of a. If we've got 12 chargers outside, it might be useful for us to have a meet there.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what's your highlight of this year?
Well, probably getting the car, because we got the car in February. So, but I just have a little anecdote. We have our next door neighbour. He's a little bit of a diesel man, and so we get a lot of stick from him about having an electric vehicle. I mean, he's fine, but if he sees us, he says, still got that effing electric car and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he turned up the other day and he was looking a bit sheepish and he said, oh, I saw a car exactly like yours down in the local village. And he said, I was gesticulating out of my diesel truck window, saying, what the are you doing here? What are you? And he said, but then the guy wound down the window and he said, but then it wasn't you. So he was using some other guy in exactly the same electric MG, same colour.
Yeah.
And I thought, so he said, I have to be a bit careful who I abuse.
You're totally surprising us because we just see Australians as mild-mannered, sweet-talking people.
Not always, no.
Mike, what's your highlight?
Beating a Ferrari off the lights.
I remember that.
He did actually catch up after 3 seconds after he realised he was being beaten by a blue MG, and he was like, "Uh-oh."
You heard him. Jake, this will be your highlight, surely. Tonight is your highlight.
Well, it is, but also having owned an EV for nearly 2 years now, my mother-in-law, who's in her mid-60s, she bought a Peugeot E208 as a replacement to a Golf on the back of me having my EV. And now my wife, who was dead set against having an EV before I owned one, now wants to own the one I have now so I can get another one. So that's my highlight.
Yeah, you're
Right.
leading the way.
Yeah, it's quite good.
Steve, what's yours?
My real one, I finally got to do a long trip. I got a few weeks ago, I got to go up to Telford to an event up there, and I stopped off at Rugby. And yes, there was one of the chargers was out, and yes, it was absolutely packed. But the nice thing was the car performed perfectly. And having come from a Leaf that only did 80 miles, it was a big grin on my face.
Yeah. Les, you've had some year because you've been quite our crusader.
Yeah, my highlight, I presume, I'm going to say this, but I think my highlight's been meeting you lot on here, all you guys on here. We've had some good chats and some good conversation between us, and on the forum as well. I think it's been great, and I think it's going to help a lot of people in the future if they look back on some of these and read what they can read on the forum. I think it's a great thing. The other highlight, I was looking the other day, somebody commented some while ago about what would happen with an electric vehicle if you went through a flooded road, if the road was flooded and you had to drive through it, you hadn't got an option. Well, I had that scenario about 3 weeks ago now. I was up in the Lake District when all the storms was going on and there was trees down all over the place. And of course, we had to go down dirt tracks and all sorts of roads to get to wherever we had to get out because we were stranded, basically. There was no electric to charge and the road was absolutely flooded, really bad. And a couple of times, Well, I don't know how it didn't come in the doors a couple of times. That's how deep it was, going very, very gently through it. But the battery was definitely underwater and it never missed a beat. Never missed a beat in any way, shape, or form. Nothing at all. It was absolutely perfect. And somebody was asking on the forum what would happen if you drove through a flood with an electric car. Well, I can tell you personally, nothing will happen. It's just exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Of course, you still got to remember that when you do come out the other side of it, is to put a little touch on the brakes just to dry them off a little bit. It's still essential that you do that. Otherwise, if you do need your brakes a little bit further down the hill, they ain't going to be there. It's as simple as that. So, yeah, I'm grateful to be on here. I'm grateful to have been able to come on here and do this with you lot. And it's been nice meeting you all. Really nice.
Good. Well, there's plenty more in 2022.
Yeah.
So before we go, there's a few things I want to bring to everybody's attention. If you're also interested in the Aura electric car or the Aura Cats coming to the UK soon, sign up over on auraev.com, our sister forum, and there's some information there. If you'd like to keep supporting us, please consider the MGEV Premier membership for just £3 a month, which gives you the Premier membership badge, the ability to load a profile banner, the ability to select the MG Red theme, and of course the discount code for MGEV merchandise, a full 10% discount, and obviously Lies used it to get his baseball hat. And then the knowledge that you're helping support the community and the podcast and keep things going. So please have a look at the merchandise. That's it for this week's podcast. I would like to thank in Australia, Jennifer.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone. Hope it's a good one next year.
Les, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dave. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy New Year. And I hope keep yourselves and your families well.
Steve, thank you for joining us again today.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, blah, blah, blah. What that lot said.
Mike, you're going to say it in Welsh, aren't you?
No, I'm just going to say yippee kayak of a bucket.
Jake, welcome for your first one. I hope it's the first of many.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody, and Happy New Year.
And working in the background, harder than Santa's elves, Stuart Wright. Thank you very much again for all your help, Stuart, and thanks for joining in. We'll be back with another podcast early in the new year. Please click all the likes and subscribes that we keep asking you to do. We really do appreciate that. Thanks. Have a good night and have a safe, healthy, happy Christmas and a happy new year, continuing to be responsible and sustainable drivers as you travel wherever you're traveling, even just outside Oslo. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you early next year. Have a great Christmas.
Bye.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.